Welcome back to the JumpifyLabs podcast. Today, we're diving into the future of work, resilience, and how to thrive through the biggest disruption we've seen since the internet: artificial intelligence. Our guest is Laurie Carey, founder of Nebula Academy, a social enterprise and training organization helping people build skills for the AI era. She's also the author of the upcoming book, Resilience is a Muscle. Laurie, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jay. Thanks for having me.
Great to be spending time with you, Laurie. I want to start off by just talking about your history a little bit. What first drew you into technology 40 years ago?
Well, it was really, I was 18 and I applied for a job working at an assembly line doing printed circuit boards. This was I'm telling my age here, this was in the early 80s, when we had manufacturing in the US still. And I started working on the assembly line, literally doing wire wrap soldering, quality control stuff, really focused on early printed circuit boards before PCs were even a thing or the internet was even a thing.
Hmm. And you also spent 10 years at Microsoft. What did that season teach you about resilience and innovation?
Working at Microsoft for 10 years was an amazing experience. It was really exciting to see. I've been through all the waves of change in my career, even pre-Microsoft, before Microsoft really, there's the days of Novell. If those listening know who that company was, that was a company that was pre-Microsoft that really had the market for networking and network operating system before Microsoft even had a network operating system. They had desktop operating system, but not a server operating system. And so I was hired by Microsoft really because of that background and experience, and because I had helped build a lot of the infrastructure and networks across state and local government across the US. And they hired me to basically come in and convert all those customers to Microsoft.
And now you're doing some cool things going on today, but what inspired you to ultimately leave corporate and start your own social enterprise?
It was really seeing the need for, a lot of, I managed a lot of what Microsoft calls partners, the partner ecosystem for Microsoft. So companies that are selling and servicing Microsoft technologies out there, and a lot of my partners were really stressed over finding the resources and getting the capacity they needed for growing their businesses. And so, for me, it was like, well, wait a minute. We have a lot of people who are unemployed, but we have these jobs that are opening in tech, but nobody's filling them because we're not training for that. And so I started a not for profit to really address that digital divide, to get people from all different backgrounds coming in, understanding the opportunities that were in tech that didn't require a high school or a college degree, that really just required a high school diploma and skills. And so that's really what kind of drove me to leaving Microsoft, was because I started that organization while I worked at Microsoft, which they were very supportive of me doing it. For other programs within Microsoft, DigiGirls was another branded program that I had taken globally within the company. And the opportunity to do this full time, to really do what I felt like was kind of like my mission or passion to do, was to change things in a positive way, change education and what we're teaching, and to get awareness out there that there's career opportunities for people that they just don't even know about.
Yeah, definitely. Well, a lot of these things is, yeah, you get some specialized training and you know more than half the people in the world, because they're the early adopters. There's not many of them. That's why they're early adopters for a reason.
Yeah,
But you have seen the internet, you've seen mobile, and now of course AI. If you had to rank those disruptions, which one feels to you the biggest?
this one.
Yeah.
Because you think about every disruption creates opportunities, right? And so, what the challenge we have is that our mindset around learning and education, it hasn't shifted enough. There's too much emphasis on theory and knowledge and not skills. And so we need to change that. We need to be really skilling people so that they have it's, think about the trades that we had years ago. When you had a trade, you had a craft, that's what you did, right? And there was real value in that. Well, those are all gone. We've kind of exported them all over to different countries, and we don't really have a lot of trades here. We do, but not as many as we should, especially in the tech industry. People that can build skills and capacity for computer science skill sets that don't require a 4-year degree. And that's what holds people back. They think, oh, I got to have a 4-year degree. I can't do that. So immediately their mindset is that they can't, that's not approachable for them. When in reality is there are skills that you can learn that don't require a college degree, that allow you to kind of go into that field and then get deeper and understanding it. But you have to kind of dip your toe in a little bit and see whether it's something that fits you, and then expand on it, instead of investing in 4 years in a degree and then coming away not really having any substantial skills and being on the market and not employable. right? We have a lot. So AI is causing some real disruptions in what we're going to be teaching going forward now too. So when the internet evolved, it was great, created lots of opportunities, lots of opportunities. And the reason why was because we had access to now education and knowledge, and I could build a skill using the internet, right? I could learn online and do all of those things. Now AI is kind of tipping us in another direction where it's like, wait a minute, that job career, and I'll give you an example. I was first coming out, prompt engineering was a big job opportunity, right? Not anymore. You know, prompt engineering is just a skill. It's not a job title, right? Everybody needs to be a prompt engineer, not just one person is a prompt engineer, right? So we've already, and that's like, look how fast that happened, right? And so when we think about marketing and all of these types of skill sets that AI is replacing, we need to have people be more resilient and being able to transition into what's next, and lifelong learners. And we don't. We still have that mentality that I build a skill and that's what I have and I don't learn anymore. And that's just not the case. We have to be continuous learners. We have to continually evolve our skills. Otherwise, we become irrelevant and not marketable. And so it's about, continuous learning, and how are we taking that understanding and applying it in the business and the corporate space and the education space to be able to ensure that everybody here is educated with the skills that they need to be able to sustain financially.
Exactly. Yeah. With the AI conversation, a lot of people are just afraid of
Oh,
AI
they
and
are.
of course the Terminator 2, Skynet, apocalypse. But how do you get past the fear of AI replacing jobs?
Yeah, so it's knowledge, it's understanding. So when we have students come into our programs and they're learning AI for the first time, they'll tell us, "Oh, I've never used this before." We'll get various out of a group of 30 students. You'll get maybe 4 or 5 of those students who've used AI, and the rest don't want to use it, don't want to touch it, don't want anything to do with it. I was at a conference, a VC conference in New York City last week, and I was talking to a gentleman. And he said, both of my kids hate AI. And I'm like, how old are they? And he was like 17 and 19. I said, well, they probably, need to change that attitude, because that's not good. If they're already hating AI and they're not embracing it, it's going to hold them back. Right. So, the students that are out there excited about AI and are embracing AI and looking for opportunities for AI are the students who are going to be successful. And I always tell people, you're not going to be replaced by somebody doing your job. You're going to be replaced by somebody who does your job with AI. That's going to happen, because if you're not embracing it and saying, hey, I got to figure out how to use this to make my job better and make me more efficient in my job, then I'm going to be left behind. And we're already seeing that. Employers are looking at, those things. When you look at people's resumes, it doesn't have anything to do with AI on it, because if it doesn't, and you don't have that skill set, you're not going to be looked at as much as somebody who does.
It's a tool, right? And you got to be able to use the tools available in order to be more efficient on the job. What are some of the practical ways that you're teaching people to use AI? Outside of the very specific business applications, educational applications, what are some more the practical ways?
Yeah, so it's really understanding application in business. So it's understanding, how do I use it for myself, right? For self improvement or for learning new things. How do I use it for an application of something in an industry that I might be interested in? If I'm interested in the legal space and I have a legal background, or I was a legal assistant or something, what am I doing in that field? And what's that field doing in AI that I can kind of position myself into an opportunity? So I'm almost like creating a career path for myself based on my knowledge that I'm learning about AI and where I might apply it. I have a student recently that's working in the medical industry, and she's looking at ways to use AI to help doctors understand better how to be prepared for grant submissions and research projects. And so she's looking at opportunities in that space. So it's really about, as a young adult, how are you understanding it as a technology? Because if you are just saying, I'm afraid of it and I don't want to go near it, it would be like saying, I'm never going to use the internet.
Yeah.
So, and that was, if we think of, there's so many turns that we've taken as like humanity, right? We think about chat. I remember when I was first introduced to chat, I was like, I don't want to do this. Can't we just do email? Do we really have to be present time? Right. And so I was not embracing it. And then I finally realized, all right, everybody's going to chat. Nobody's doing email anymore. So I gotta like get on board here. Right. And that was early for me too, because, I've been in the tech industry. So anything that I'm involved in is not the norm. Right. Because I was doing it way before everybody else. And so, when you're in the tech industry, especially, you really have to embrace this stuff, because you're going to be out of a job or out of a future. Right. So you're not in the tech industry and you're thinking about AI. What is it that you are involved in? Is it food service? Is it hospitality? Is it medical industry? Everybody's using AI. Do you understand how your industry is using AI? If you don't, get yourself educated. And that's how we're helping our students understand that. How is it being applied in different industries and where is the opportunity? And how can you learn about it and then see the opportunity and think about what you want to dig deeper on to have a better knowledge base? If you're a developer, how are you using it to help you develop faster? Development now is happening at 10x, right? So we're not developing 1x anymore. We're developing at 10x. And some development companies are pushing to 40x. So it's really about, how are you taking your skill sets? And employers are saying, if you're a developer and you're not using AI, we'll move on to somebody who is. And I've seen that internally in our own environment, in our own culture in our company, is really convincing them, hey, guys, you got to move forward with this. We need to see the development pace take it up a notch.
Yeah. How are you seeing actually AI shifting career paths and leadership in the next 5 or so years?
In the leadership perspective, it's really about making sure that leaders understand their industry well enough to see where AI is going to disrupt them, right? And be forward thinking enough to look for opportunities in that space within your company, but how you're going to use it to grow and expand or disrupt yourself so that you can be the leading aspect of that in your industry. If it's medical industry, how are you using it to apply to whatever it is, pharmaceutical? The medical industry is booming with AI because it's such an application for research and science, right? It's going to leap us forward, in amazing ways. And then there's the negative aspect of AI too that we have to deal with, right? Ethical aspects, the music industry, all of those things that are going to get disrupted, and we've got to be careful of how we allow it to disrupt us. Leaders have to be really thinking about all of those consequences that are both positive and negative from an AI perspective, and even the cybersecurity challenges that they're going to come along with it.
Yeah. And for the companies that resist adoption, what's the cost of waiting?
You can maybe out of business.
Good.
Or out of ways too, because remember too that people want to grow and develop. And if they're not seeing the company growing and developing, they're not going to see a future for themselves there either. And it creates stagnant skills. So if you're a company that's not progressive and helping your staff become more valuable to your business, then they also may not be valuable to other businesses. So it's retaining staff by giving them opportunities for growth in a space that's growing is important. And it's I wanna be careful of, like, the dot-com burst and bubble when we think about when tech was doing tech just because it was cool, right? You don't wanna be doing AI because it's cool and it's the next thing. You gotta be smart about it, and that's what I think we've learned, and I hope that we've learned, and that people don't repeat that, right? Because that's what people's fear is, that it's gonna be another dot-com bubble, right? Where it'll blow up, and there is risk in that. There's definitely risk in that if we're not careful, right? So we have to really think about and be strategic about the application, how it's going to expand our businesses, and what value is it going to give to our top line.
And regarding AI and the education and the training part of it, tell us a little bit about Nebula Academy.
Yeah, so what we're focused on is really helping people understand the opportunities and career paths for the future and the skills that they need to get there and the resilience that they're needing with it. And that's really the key point here is that we're not just teaching the tech skills, we're blending resilience training with it. We as a society need to understand what people are going to do and how they're going to feel when they have these threats around them, like AI. And your point too is some people are like they have this really off the charts drama that we're going to be replaced by robots and all that AI movie stuff, right? And so, how are we instilling abilities for people to deal with fast, rapid change? And that means that we need to be a little bit more resilient, and we need to have training around that. There's so much information out today around neuroscience and how our brains work and how we learn that we can take that information and teach it to people. And what we've seen by blending resilience training with tech skills, it really helps people learn and create stickiness better. Because if you understand how your brain absorbs information, how you learn, you can better position yourself for a positive learning experience. And so that you're learning what you need to learn, when you need to learn it, and how you need to learn it. So do I need, visuals? Do I need more auditory? What do I need from me to kind of absorb content? And so we've invested big in that a learning management space, because we know through the years that we've been doing training and teaching is that we need to create environments for people that have effective learning experiences. And we need to be able to have data to be able to shift and move in a way where we see value in learning outcomes that are positive or negative. How are we addressing that quickly so that we can readjust our learning content? Because part of the problem in education is that our content becomes static and old fast, right? And so to be able to keep our content current and relevant to today's, otherwise we're investing in content and learning experiences that have no value to us. And that's a waste of money and time, right? So our system is designed to really help that neurodiverse learner really engage in learning content, also helping companies to be able to focus on learning content that's not like all over the charts. Companies today are using things like LinkedIn Learning, which are great. But from a business perspective, how are you managing that consumption of information for your employees that are going to give you value to your business? It's similar to when we saw the internet come out. Are they reading a magazine or are they using my learning platform? What are they doing? Right. So if you can create an environment or learning platform that has very focused training and learning around your business, and you've got the data metrics to see that training created value for the business, that's really what we're shifting to. And so from a corporate perspective, that's important. I want to know how well the training was, whether they got the learning outcomes that they needed, what was the impact on the business, and what was the training experience for the instructors, what was the metrics on the instructors, so that I can look at that data and make course corrections as I need to.
That's definitely an interesting topic because the data is going to reveal if the training worked or not, right? We kind of like measure the ROI of this investment in this sort of training. Being able to track that, I mean, that's huge for corporations and businesses to be able to know whether the investment was actually a sound one. You mentioned resilience. So I want to talk about your book in a moment, but resilience to me seems like to be like an inherent character trait where you either have it or you don't. But you're talking about building that resilience. That's, I guess, one way that you guys are using AI to build resilience.
Yeah. So, it's really about understanding how your emotions and your PFC, for your executive function, how they interact and relate to each other. So there's science that shows us that we can build resilience, right? We can, because resilience is literally, it's an aspect of you that you can train and develop to be stronger. And I use the analogy of, when you're standing in a cold shower, those emotions that you feel, like that cold water hits you. And it's like, whoa, my heart races, my brain's, like, I got to get out of here, right? But if you stay in that water for a little longer, your body starts to build tolerance to it, right? And it gets better and easier. And that's just one analogy to use about resilience, but you can develop it. People, there's a lot of assessments and profile assessments that we do out there that kind of put people in a box. And I'm not a big fan of putting somebody in a box, because now your mindset is, I'm in that box and I may not shift out of that box. And we need people to jump out of the box, right? And we need them to see that they are capable and that they can demonstrate through, managing their emotions to kind of overcome that mindset that may be holding you back. A lot of people in the book, we get into some personal stories of my own and how I built resilience. And that's really what we're trying to show, is the correlation between a personal experience, professional experience, and the science associated to that experience. Why does our brain behave the way it is? It's designed to protect us. It's not designed to keep us happy. It's not designed to, fulfill us in our life. It's designed to protect us. And so those things can sometimes put us in a cage and hold us in a place where we can't move forward, right? And so it's helping people understand, how do I move forward in a positive way? And what are the strategies that I can use to help me, breathing mechanisms, all of those things that I can use to help me move past that stuck moment.
Ah, that's so cool. I love this science talk. I mean, my inner nerd is just screaming about wanting
Yeah,
to go down
mine
this
too.
path, this path, this path. You have so many different ways we can take this conversation. But you have worked with everyone from teenagers to senior executives. The curious part I have in my head is right now is who's adopting this. I guess who's more easier to train as far as the resilience part? Is it a young person we can instill and build that resilience easier? Because also we have this adage where someone's kind of stuck in their ways. right? So
They bring bias, right? And that's really what we talk about, bias. Bias is what shapes you, who you are, your upbringing, all of those things that kind of lock your mindset into maybe a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. Kara Dweck does a lot of work in this space. So there's a lot of really smart people out there doing some amazing work in cognitive neuroscience. And so we have to look at that research and understand it and do a lot of validation of that research. And we do that in our organization. We do pre and post assessments. We do what's called a resilient quotient assessment on somebody to see where they're at from a resilience standpoint. And then looking at that after a training course or after a coaching session, where are they now, and have they shifted that mindset? And can they now have the coping skills that they need to move forward or move past something? And then really kind of reflecting on what's holding you back? What's the emotion? Can you name it? Because if you can name an emotion, it actually helps calm the limbic system down so that you can move forward and move past that emotion by just giving it a name, right? So when you ask me the question about which is the easiest age group to teach, it depends. I can say this, that in the years that we've been doing this, when we first started doing this over 10 years ago, we got a lot of pushback from people when we started talking about neuroplasticity and these words. They were like, oh, those are too big of words. You got to kind of take it down. I said, you want me to dumb down neuroscience? So, but when I have this conversation with a young adult, a 13 or 14-year-old or an 18 or 19-year-old, they're intrigued. They're like, why didn't somebody teach this to me in school? Right? They want to know why they don't have this information already. Right? Because they see how valuable it is and how important it can be to them in their future. And so they want to know more. They want to dig in. They want to understand more. And so when I talk to other people that have that kind of fixed mindset, we have to, they have to see it and experience it to really kind of break past that. And we do end up, sometimes it's a little harder to do that with those people, but over time we make progress.
yeah. See, because my thinking was, yes, we have the bias, right, from somebody who has a little bit more experience. And then with the younger generation, we have there's another issue there where it's a lack of attention span because of social media. It's very small and we have to hold their attention.
There's science behind that too. And what I'm finding is, and even with my own, I have 4 kids and their age ranges are pretty broad because I've been a parent for a long time. And so when I look at my younger sons, 24 and 20, they have a much more, and I don't, it's not because of me, it's because of just who they are and the age they're growing up in. They have a greater understanding of how their dopamine impacts them. And so this generation is starting to see the neuroscience and how it's affecting them, right? And they're not liking it. So they're actually taking action. And they know that, okay, if I kind of remove the screen time and I stop playing video games for X amount of time, I can reset my dopamine receptors, right? This is information that they know. And so when I have conversations with them, I love hearing how much they're informing themselves about how technology is impacting their brains. And so, because it's research has been proven. We know it's not a good thing in many ways that how technology has impacted our young adults, and why we should not let children have cell phones to a certain age, right? And how much time they should be spending with screen time. These are all validated research that's been done, and so we as a society have to really start thinking about our generations and how we're impacting their futures.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a lot of information now, and the thing is, I do see a little bit of both. I have younger nieces and nephews who are very in tune towards, at this. I don't get on TikTok. I don't do any of that. They are using AI, and then I know some other younger people who are just endlessly doom scrolling. So
Yeah.
I do see both sides. Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where you kind of worry a little bit because if they embrace the technology and they're the new generation, that's going to keep on moving this evolution forward. We can be very smart, outstanding, really tech focused society, but also on the other end, we could be a very attention deficit society.
Yeah,
So,
and it's a balance, right? So it's teaching them that. So this is why it's so important to teach resilience training in our education system, because we're teaching the science behind learning and then blending that with some resilience training. So the book is really about resilience, but in our core programs, we're teaching the science behind learning first, because you really have to have some foundational knowledge of how your brain's operating. right? Your operating system, and how that can impact your learning experience. And then once you have that foundational knowledge, then you can build on it from there. And so, educators need to understand this. Anybody in the education space needs to understand this. Parents need to understand this. And this is why the book, the last chapter, is called The Resilience Revolution, because we're hoping that through this book, that people will start to take notice and to realize what we need to do as a society to ensure that our next generation has the resilience built into them to be able to sustain the rapid changes that are coming.
Yeah. My next question was going to be what prompted you to write Resilience is a Muscle? However, throughout this conversation, I think audience would know why now. Where can people find it?
So for now, it's nebulaacademy.com. Still in review, going to the publishers soon. We're super excited about the reads, the feedback that we've gotten from the folks that have initially done the read. We've had people from all different age groups reading it. One educator really stood out. Somebody who's that's when retired educator told us that the feedback that she got was, this is incredible and this needs to be in every teacher's hands, and I wish this was in my hands when I was an educator, because this is not, we teach how we teach, and we teach what we know and how we were taught, right? And so when we've got a very aging educators out there, we need to get them up to speed, and we need to make sure that in the teacher training this is happening at that level, so that when they come out of college and they're going into the schools to teach, they already have the foundational skills and knowledge to prepare that next generation.
Yeah, definitely. This is such an amazing topic. I love every bit of it so far. I know we can riff on for much longer, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. What is the best way for anyone listening, anyone watching to get involved with some of your work?
Yep, they can go to nebulaacademy.com or stellar-learn.com. Those are the two sites that they can learn more about our organization and the work we're doing.
Thank you so much, Laurie. I appreciate you sharing some of your valuable time with me and our listeners. If you like stories like this from other leaders who are really pushing the envelope and driving business forward, make sure you tune in for more. My name is Jay. Thanks so much for listening. Take care.